What happens to the rest of the country? And of course, this is time that we want to have an engagement with the NewsGang bench here. Who wants to go first? Let's start with JB today. And looking at those figures, how do you reconcile the official statistics? Well, everything is official, but there's the official that is in books versus what is said versus the reality.
I think the challenge with the government is that it does not communicate within itself. Because I've just had a quick glance on the Affordable Housing Board website, and if you look at the number of houses that have been complete, the projects, most are on the ongoing stage. So I think reconciling this simply is about the government or the political wing of the government going to market with projects that are still on the procurement stage. And therefore, for them, because the numbers wow and the numbers excite, then it is easier for them to tell people that this is what we have created, this is what we have. However, in real terms, you go to the Affordable Housing Board website, then you realize that the numbers that the Chief Executive Officer was giving is near what is true. Mm-hmm. So I think the government needs to communicate more within themselves. They should not let the political wing run away with the story, because otherwise they'll be selling something that is still on paper and not exactly projects that are ongoing or jobs that have been created or money that has been raised. It is based on the projections. Right.
And Jamila, looking at, if you look at the numbers of the jobs that are being created and the quick transition from 168,000 jobs in October last year to now 320,000, and when you look at the impact at the economic side, you don't feel it. Again, this versus reality?
True. Like Bonyo was just saying, and kwa ground mambo ni tofauti. I feel with this administration, it is announcing projects faster than it can implement them. The housing one of them. And the changing numbers, the inconsistencies in exactly how many jobs have been created from what the politicians say to what is the reality. And I think the challenge that they have here is not a lack of ideas. It's a lack of implementation, especially those promises that are made to masses or those numbers that are thrown around, depending on who's listening or who's watching, which looks like there's no anchor in policy, there's no anchor in budget. So it starts somewhere, but where does it end? And if you look at the promises that were made, bottom-up and economics, it's almost turning up into promises up economics or promises up politics. Mm-hmm. Because exactly why are we doing what we are doing? Why are we talking about jobs? Because we want to improve people's lives. Why are we building the houses? The reasons have changed from the initial one to what we have now. But there's something there about watu wapate nyumba, watu wapate kazi. But is that where we are right now compared to where we should be? The initial plan, remember, Gituk, I don't know if you mentioned, it was 250,000 houses a year.
Yep.
We're ending up with, what, 1,000 and something only that have been completed so far. When
that's what's completed, according to the CEO.
And we should be having 750,000 houses if the plan had been as had been expected.
Right.
So there's this whole thing of what was promised versus what has been implemented. And the thing should be, what they should be doing now is looking at what has stopped us from implementing what we had planned and then work towards that. And if it's not working, let's revise the whole thing and try and find solutions.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And of course, Linas, as you look at what has been happening, even at the meetings that have been at State House, the President has been keen to talk about the commitments of 600,000, or rather 600 billion shillings. It's very complicated for me. 600 billion shillings worth of projects. But at the same time, we're getting to the point of dishing them out. As late as last week on Saturday, 20% of housing units, affordable housing units, were allocated to teachers. An MOU was signed between Teacher Service Commission, or rather the Teachers Fraternity and the Affordable Housing Board. But at the same time, 4 counties have been promised projects worth 99 billion shillings. What is this?
I think this entire housing project faces 2 main underlying conditions, which, if government is not careful, can be fatal. One is social acceptance. You see, this is a project founded in contention. There's a principle in the Kenyan Constitution called public participation, where you have to involve the public, you have to involve regular citizens in decision making. And housing levy, the deductions of it, really never passes that mark. And even the whole project of delivering houses to the public, including those who need the houses, people have been asking questions. Have they fully accepted it? And if they have not fully accepted it, then it means they are complaining constantly. And one of the most constant complaints about taxes in this country have been specifically about the housing levy, which especially those in employment, whether it's in private or public sector, are complaining that this is extra money that they have lost to causes they are not sure of. And that brings me to the second issue that affects this project, and that is the skepticism. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows how this will play in the end. Where is it going? Because, you know, you sometimes see these houses being given out as gifts to Harambee Stars players. You've won, so some houses will be allocated to you. And you've spoken about you've spoken about the signing of MOUs with teachers. Is this the agreement between the deal between the government and the taxpayer? When you are being deducted, you are again required to be on another second level arrangement where you go to your teachers union to sign an agreement to get that house. There's so many dark areas. So there's those two issues. One is the skepticism, public skepticism, and two is the whole question of acceptance. Let's never forget that Kenyan who asked a question. Nani hana kwao?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing for me is numbers, and you've just been presenting those on data point. I mean, the biggest thing we say is numbers don't lie, but increasingly in this country, numbers don't add up. 1 + 1 doesn't necessarily equals 2. And there's always a very desperate attempt to use numbers to sell a political narrative. You know, for instance, in this one, you've raised some of those discrepancies about, you know, what's happening in counties. I mean, I think, and most of the data that contradicts each other is government data. So several people in government will be giving different figures that sometimes change overnight or change in a couple of days. And, you know, margins of error are allowed, but sometimes they're just too stark for us to start wondering, you know, what's going on here. I mean, I think you've highlighted this. The one for me, I think, that stands out the most is if you're building more houses, what's the one key component of a house? Cement. And yet, if you take a look at the numbers of consumption of cement, say in 2022, even before this administration came in and before they began with this ambitious project, the cement consumption in 2022 was 9.45 million tons, right? It went down to 9.2 million in 2023, by which we had started building some houses, right. Went further down to 8.47 million tons in 2024. By January of this year, it went down again to 801,000 you know, tons. So take a look at this. You know, these two numbers should be going up in tandem. Right. The more houses you build, the more cement is being consumed in the country. And by the way, as we will discuss a little later, the numbers don't add up not just in affordable housing, but in many of the other projects that this administration has taken on. And so for me, it becomes difficult when the government, which should be the single source of truth, can't even seem to agree amongst themselves, you know, are they 1 or are they 100? You know, right. That should just be fairly simple. And that's not the case here.
Very many sources, and of course, as you do this work, you also have to consult as many documents as you can. So what stood out for me is that the Control of Budget report of up to June 2025 reporting that there are 100,000 housing units that were supposed to be constructed in the constituencies, but the progress had been targeted at 15% completion. As of the date of reporting, it was 13.5%. So still not meeting the target, but also this conversation that 320,000 jobs are being created, and you're talking about roughly 200,000 units being constructed, or 200 sites, according to the, again, statements from the executive. So if 320,000 jobs are being created, in 200 sites.
Yeah.
So that is about 1,600 jobs. And yes, not everyone works on site.
Yeah.
There are those that will be in the Jokali sector. There are those that maybe were employed so that to meet the demand of cement, which, as you're saying, data does not agree with. So there are many questions that do not look believable, but it's quite suspicious that you don't see a lot of published official figures from the government on the progress of affordable housing.
Yeah.
Sam, do you have figures on the occupancy of the completed units? How many have been occupied?
Well, there was a figure that the CEO, Sheila Wairu, gave us when she was here last time, because at the time she was saying that 3,000 units have been completed. But it is the units of under William Ruto, but also those that have been started by Uhuru Kenyatta. So all those, she was saying that most of them have actually been occupied or taken over.
Yeah, just one more illustration of this to do with jobs, right, that have been created as a result of this. In November 2024, the president said this plan had created 164,000 jobs.
Yep.
That was on the 21st of November. By the 12th of December, that number had gone up to 200,000 jobs that had been created. Granted, you know, this is an evolving and dynamic one, but it just seems, you know, with how things move. By February, he said the number was now over 250,000. And then he said in March, 240,000 to be exact. Now, also, those number of jobs would go in line with the rate of completion, like are they at 15% or 30% and that sort of thing. So it's that you keep hearing different figures as days go by. Sometimes we've seen changes of numbers in 24-hour period. Yeah, I don't know.
Depending
the numbers, depending on the day, depending on who you ask, depending
on the audience,
on the
people
audience,
watching
exactly.
as you're speaking.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. And of course, NewsGang will